Hello, welcome to the Pedestal Society. My name is Braille. I'm going to wait for everybody to get into the room, and we're going to talk about how to let go using the law of detachment. I have been missing for probably a week, just about sickness. You know how it goes, family first. So I want to jump in, and I want to talk about the law of detachment and what it truly is. The spiritual law of basically letting go without expectation is the law of detachment. The law of detachment is not about being pessimistic, it's not about being rigid, it's not about being hardened, it's not about walking around with a chip on your shoulder. When it comes to being or practicing the law of detachment, which is a spiritual law, you all know I have been on this kick of talking about spiritual laws and how to apply them in our lives so that we can have the best version of ourselves and the best life that we can possibly offer. Hey, Selena, it doesn't mean that you give up your desire for something. It doesn't mean that you have to release all your desires and all the things that you desire for yourself because you're practicing the law of detachment. It just means that you're going to let go of the outcome. When women detach from the outcome or expectations when it comes to men, it gives them the opportunity for desire, for commitment to be more fluid, flexible, and creative. So let's talk about that. One of the things I've come across since I mentor women, and I've been doing this for a very long time, almost close to 5 years online, and possibly about 2 or 3 years before I decided to do social media. I've been working with women and mentoring women and supporting and advising women on their journey to womanhood. And the thing that I've realized, and the reason why I feel like women should learn how to practice the law of detachment properly, and not from a place of, I don't hate men, by the way. Before we get into it, I do not hate men. I absolutely adore and love a man, and with a man currently have been married for a very long time to him. So I'm not coming from a place of I hate men and I want you to have some type of chip or some kind of grudge against men. I'm teaching you the law of detachment, how to practice it, because the more that you desire something, the more that you are emotionally attached to that desire, the harder it is for that desire to manifest. And so practicing the law of detachment and releasing the outcome and letting it work itself way out breeds uncertainty, and uncertainty creates creativity. It gives so many different ways for that thing to manifest in your life, for that desire for you to have it. So when I come across women, sometimes I've come across the 6 feet, six pack, six-figure guy that women will have in their mind as the image of their husband. And one of my job is not to detour them of having desire, but to absolutely have them hold more on to that desire and release the outcome. The reason why we're going to release the outcome, because when you have a desire for something, but you have a rigid mindset of how it's supposed to show up, then you don't, you absolutely will pass over something better. See, God knows better than you. See, you might be saying, I want that 6 foot man, that six pack, six-figure guy. God might have an eight-figure guy for you that's 5'9" and maybe a little chubby. But since you have that rigid mindset and you want that desire to come through in that particular way, you limit how that desire gets to manifest. So that's the reason why it's so important that you learn how to practice the law of detachment. Practicing the law of detachment releases you from the outcome. It allows uncertainty to breed creativity, because when there's uncertainty, it absolutely brings about creative ideas, inspired actions, and intuition, intuitive nudges that you can take in order to receive that desire. But when you have your mindset and you're like, I gotta have this, I gotta have it this way, then you limit yourself from being able to experience the blessings of God, that God may want you to have it in a different package, in a different way, in a better way. But you may have a limitation, it limits you. So this is the reason why I want to encourage you to learn how to practice the law of detachment. And we're going to talk about how to practice the law of detachment and what you need to implement in order to detach from the situation. Because a lot of the women on my page, you're interested in commitment with man. And there's nothing wrong with being committed to man. I'm going to tell you right now, we're humans. Humans are social creatures. Humans want to interact with each other. They desire companionship, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's actually very healthy. I know that when people teach the law of detachment, they try to teach you that you should detach from everything and not have any type of desire. That is not how you're supposed to implement the law of detachment. When you're implementing the law of detachment, it doesn't mean that you're releasing the desire or intention that you have. It just means you release the outcome that you have, that you don't have or create this rigid image of how it's supposed to come to you. Now it gets to come to you in multiple ways. Now it gets to come to you bigger and better than before. Just imagine the things that you can imagine. Just imagine what the creator can imagine. So if you have it in your head that I gotta have it this way, and you're attached emotionally to it, then when it comes to you and it shows up in the way that it's supposed to show up, you may reject it because it's not coming to you in the way you want it to come. This is the reason why detaching from the desire is so important. Detaching how the desire gets to come into your world and how it gets to manifest and how you get to experience it is so important to being able to receive something bigger and better than you ever imagined. Because our imaginations, they're limited. They're limited by our human. They're limited by our experiences. They're limited by our situations. There's limitations when it comes to our imagination. But when we allow ourselves to have any desire and we plant that desire there and let that seed be planted, and we don't sit here and try to imagine how the outcome is going to be, we breed in uncertainty, which uncertainty breeds creativity. So now it gets to come to us in multiple ways. Now maybe instead of us have our hopes set on just that six-figure, six-pack, 6-foot man, we may get the 8-figure man that's 5'9" and maybe a little chubby. Or maybe we may get the other guy that he's 300,000, but he has a lot of he has a lot of resources. He has something more to offer us. But we won't ever know that if we continue to limit ourselves and we limit our desires. We are so attached emotionally to that desire that when the thing comes that's bigger and better, we can't even accept it and we can't even see it. So you don't want to be emotionally attached to the desire. You don't want to sit here and have an image for that desire. Because the more that you have that emotional attachment to that desire, the image for the desire, when the real thing shows up, you may not even be able to accept it. I'll pause. You may not even be accepted because our imagination is really limited. The things that we really can have for ourselves, there is no limit. Even now, when I say that there is no limits, I even feel that a little bit in my gut because I understand that even my imagination is limited. The things that God has for me, the Most High, the Creator, whatever you want to call it, whatever you want to. If you want to call it the universe, go for it. But the things that the Most High, God has for me, there is no limitation. My imagination will be limitless. But for me as a human, even the spiritual side of me, you're only going to be able to go so far. So the law of detachment is not about, I hate men. It's not about, ew, he has the cooties. It's not about you having a chip on your shoulder when it comes to man. It's just more about you're not trying to be emotionally attached to the desire because you want the desire to manifest in multiple ways and you want to be open for that desire to come to you in the best way possible, not limited to your own imagination. So I'm going to go ahead and pause here. If you have something you want to comment, hey, Maria, really need to hear all of this. Thank you for this live. You're welcome. Hey, Daisy. You all, I miss you all so much. You all, I just had we had health scares in this house. So I had to take a break and get all of that together and then come back. But when a woman looks and has this mentality of ownership when it comes to man, and honestly, it's not even just women. If you want to be honest about this, is a human thing. It's a human thing to look at another person and view as ownership. But then when you view something as ownership, you actually limit the ability for growth. So it's not just women and it's not just men. It's a human thing to, when you get into a relationship, to see it as this is mine and I am attached to it. But when you practice the law of detachment, you no longer look at people as ownership. You look at people as people. You look at people as an adult. You look at people as growth. You look at people as possibilities. You look at people as it's uncertainty. And see, uncertainty breeds creativity. And this is the reason why it's so important to practice law of detachment, regardless of if you are in the market for commitment with a man or if you're not in the market of commitment for a man. This can be applied to whatever you're trying to manifest or bring into this reality. Whatever you desire for yourself, it will still apply. Maybe you're not in the mindset of commitment with man right now. Maybe you're in a mindset of abundance and wealth. Then you definitely do not want to have an emotional attachment to that wealth or abundance, because when you have an emotional attachment to anything, you limit how it's able to be perceived and how it's able to manifest. Because most of us as humans, we think about how we are going to receive that thing or how we see that thing. And when you do that, you limit yourself, because your imagination is limited already. It's limited by your humanness. It's limited by your experience. It's limited by your situations. It's limited by your life. So if you limit yourself and that desire and the things that you want to manifest in this reality, and the things that you want to have for yourself, you may not even be able to accept what could be. Miss you too. Glad everything's better. Yes, you all. I miss you all so much. Hi, Brill. Can you speak a little bit more on decentering men while still keeping yourself aligned with your desires for partnership? Thanks. Well, when it comes to the law of detachment, is you don't let go of the desire. You're a human woman. Human woman desires companionship just like a human man does. Only thing is, when you are decentering that man, it's more along the lines of you have the desire for a commitment. Your intention is to get in a commitment, but you don't have a makeup or image of how that commitment is going to be when you're trying to detach. And detachment is practice, because it took me a while, because I grew up, I mean, I'm no different than you. I was once a little girl too, now a woman. And at that point, I dealt with the same thing, because I think when it comes down to it, we're conditioned to look at men or women as ownership. And so it took practice to decenter, and decenter even my husband. I don't center my husband. I decentered him a long time ago. And that took practice, because we're not taught to decenter. We're taught ownership. We've even taught, when it comes to like commitment, that when it comes to man and woman, that you own that other person. You own who they are, and you own everything that they're going to be. So I had to take practice in order to decenter. And that took me taking time with self to medicate, to pray, to journal, and really dig in and practice the law of detachment, because it's easy to say detach from men. Okay. But you have to separate the desire from the outcome in order to detach. I realized that it's okay to have a desire. It's okay to have an intention. It's okay to follow the inspired actions. It's okay to follow intuition, but it's not okay to limit or look at another person as though view the lens of ownership. It's not okay to limit that person, because when we look at another person through the lens of ownership, we limit who they get to be. And when I started taking those lenses off and I started looking at him as though he was a man and he has his own wants, he has his own dream, he has his own things that he has for himself that he's trying to accomplish, that helped me to detach even further, because I started looking at him as though he's an adult, he's a man, he has his own desires, he has his own dreams, he has his own wants, he has his own needs. I started looking at the full individual instead of just looking at it through, oh, I have this commitment, then I own him and he has to show up in this particular way for me. And nothing wrong with having standards about how your husband shows up, okay, and boundaries. But when you start to limit who they get to be, then it becomes an issue. So it's a practice, because I think we've been conditioned to center men anyway. We're conditioned as little girls, because even as little girls, think about how many times you probably envisioned your wedding. Like, you didn't even give the desire or want of a wedding to be in you without imagining how that wedding is going to play out. So you don't even know what your wedding could have been. Your wedding could have been something else. It could have been something greater, something better, because our imagination is limited. But we're taught and conditioned to center men, and it starts as little girls. And like I said, we're having this conversation. We're not having this conversation from a place of, I hate men, I don't hate men. I absolutely love men. A man provides for me. I love a man. But I understand that when I am attached to him and I center him, I am limiting him, because this prevents him from growing, from being a better husband to me. Because then he has to only live up to my expectations of husband when he can live up to what God has for him to be, God's expectation of husband. But detaching is a daily practice. It's not something, I don't feel like it's something one and done. Personally, I haven't found it to be a one and done situation. To me, it's daily detaching from that desire and that outcome and letting itself work itself out. Because when I detach, I realize when I'm detached, more of my problems find solutions. When before I was forcing solution. That's the reason why the law of detachment works across the board. It's not just about being with a man or being with a woman. It's more about being able to let go and lean back and just be. But it's a daily practice, detach from, and like I said, there's nothing wrong. You're human. You're humans desire partnership. Humans desire companions. They did an experiment where they put people in jail and they realized how much of a social creature that humans are. So this is a natural thing. So don't beat yourself up if you keep having the desire for companionship or partnership. That's natural. What is not natural is when you are emotionally attached to that thing. When you feel like it hurts your worth or your value if you're not partnered up or if you're not with or in a commitment. That's the only thing you should be more concerned about. Don't be concerned about the desire for partnership or companionship, because it's actually a human thing. We're trying to stomp out human things out of women. And it doesn't make sense. It's logically impossible because it's a part of our nature to desire some type of companionship, just like it's a part of a man's nature to desire companionship and partnership. The thing is, what we have to do is release this emotional attachment that we have to gain partnership or companionship. Release the emotional attachment of feeling like you don't have value or you're not worthy or something's wrong with you. Release that part of it, and you'll be a whole lot better off in practicing the law of detachment. How do we apply this in everyday life? I think I answered that, but we can go in more detail because I still apply it in everyday life. I don't, like I said, I have not felt that practicing the law of detachment is like a one and done thing. I truly do feel that it is a series of habits that have allowed me to practice the law of detachment. Because if I was constantly, as a woman and a married woman, I have certain expectations for my husband. And instead of me constantly being on his head of how that expectation is supposed to play out, all I need to do is tell him and give him the space to grow and fulfill that expectation. But when I have the attachment of the outcome riding my back, I don't give this person the opportunity to grow. And this is the reason why a lot of people aren't good partners. They're not good partners or companions because they don't give people that space for them to grow and to step into that expectation or to do that thing. They expect people to do it the way that they do it. And I let that go. That's another way of me practicing detachment is I'm not constantly on his head of him doing it the way I would do it. I just tell him what I need and I allow him to fulfill that need. And through him fulfilling that need, he's grown into be the man he is today. But what if I'd have been on his head constantly? And I would have been on his head about how it's supposed to be, how I expect the outcome to be. Then I would be limiting his growth. And that goes back to me not seeing him as me owning him and accepting that there's risk. There is risk in life. There's uncertainty in life. You're never going to get or erase uncertainty or risk in life. Life is a risk. Breathing is a risk. Living is a risk. And so when I started to let that go, that helped me to practice the law of detachment. Because then I started letting go of, I started realizing no matter how much you try to limit risk, you're always going to have it. You're going to have it when you have commitment. You're going to have it when you have children. You're going to have it when you go into new careers. You're going to have it when you start a business. You're going to have risk in every aspect. And through that risk creates uncertainty, and through that uncertainty breeds creativity. I've been able to come back stronger than ever every time I've had a little bit of uncertainty. And I allowed the problems to be solved because I allowed a solution to come to me instead of me trying to force a solution. But it's a daily practice. It's not something you're going to get a one and done. It's not that simple. I wish it was, but it isn't. It does take you daily checking in with yourself and, lovingly studying yourself and making sure that you're not emotionally attached to the thing and just letting that thing go and letting that thing, and instead of sitting back with some form of desperation or, fear that if you let it go, that it's not going to come back, or if you let it go, that it's going to, not be solved. Letting it go and just releasing it and letting the problem solve itself, you will find that will happen more. You'll find that more of the solutions will come to you when you learn to let things go. So do you mean be in flow? Yes, I do mean you can be in the flow is important also. When you're in flow and you're just letting things go and just, letting your problems be solved, letting solutions come to you, letting things come to you, people come to you, opportunities come to you, you will find that a lot of your problems literally solve themselves or the solution will present itself. But a lot of times it doesn't present itself because of the fact we're emotionally attached to the outcome of that problem. So we don't give the opportunity for that to happen. But the law of detachment is so important, not just to a commitment with a man. When it comes to manifesting or changing or creating your reality, detachment is so important because now you get the opportunity for God to do something bigger than you can do for yourself. Because even your imagination is limited to what can happen for you. Even when it comes to me, I consider myself to be a very conscious person. And I realize that even my imagination can have some limits. So that's the reason why it's so important to practice the law of detachment and let the outcome go and not be emotionally attached to the outcome. Because when you're emotionally attached to something, you be so worried and you used to be so worried and stressed out about it that you try to force a solution. You try to figure it out so you can get it off your plate. But then you never know if you've let that situation go and not be emotionally attached to it, the solution would have came to you and it would have been solved better than you could have solved it yourself. So detaching every day is a daily practice because we're literally being conditioned to be attached and to be emotionally attached. Think about all the things you see on television, all the advertisement, everything is set up to trigger our emotions and then set us up to be attached emotionally to that thing. And the more emotionally attached to the thing, the more rigid we are around it. So now instead of it being let go and released and allowing it to solve itself, we are emotionally attached to it and we're limiting how it gets to show up. Just like that example I gave with women sometimes, and I haven't only came across that case like once. Majority of women are not sitting around here saying that men have to be 6 foot, six figures, and have a six pack. Majority of women are literally thinking or looking at the average man. So that's not the majority. I've only came across it once, but even with that mindset, is so rigid. And I've come across other women, they have a rigid view or mindset when it comes to the type of man. Instead of just going with the desire and holding the desire in your heart that you want to be in a commitment, companionship, and not having such a rigid view of how it's supposed to show up, how the desire is supposed to show up. Since our imagination is so limited, you don't even know what could be offered to you as far as what God will give to you when you're not limiting how he's able to bring that desire into your reality. And don't get offended by he. Remember, it's a slip of the tongue. I don't believe in he or she when it comes to God. I believe in spirit. But the law of detachment works across the board. It doesn't matter if you want to detach from man. It doesn't matter if you want to detach with the your career. It doesn't matter if you want to detach the wealth. It doesn't matter what you decide you want to detach from. It's just best to detach from it so that you can put it out there, that you have that desire and that intention, and then allow for the solution to come to you. Because the solution will be better than the solution that you can even solve for. There have been so many times when, before I got into this mindset, I would try to solve something and it would end up backfiring on me when I could have just waited. If I would have just waited, it would have been solved better than I could have even thought to solve it. Because when we're dealing with um, people, human beings, and being in the flow and just allowing ourselves to be, so many things are revealed to you when you are. All right, so I'm going to pause for a moment. You all have, if you have any questions or any comments that you want to make, go ahead and make them. But I really want to talk about this, the spiritual law, the law of detachment, because regardless of what we're trying to manifest or what desire that we currently have for ourselves, if you learn how to practice the law of detachment and let go of the emotion that it brings up, because some of us are so, we want commitment so bad that we have created desperation. So now, when it comes to desperation, desperation can also lead to more a limited mindset. So the more desperate you get, have you realized that the more desperate that a woman gets when it comes to commitment, because she wants to be married by a certain time, she will begin to accept anything. She, instead of her list starts to get even smaller and smaller and smaller. Not even list, her desire. What she desires in a commitment with the man gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And then she begins to accept less than what she deserves, just because of the fact that she has an emotional attachment to getting in any commitment with a man. So that's the reason why you lead to situations where you have women that'll get with the man and she'll lose everything. But if she just held on to her desire for commitment and partnership or companionship with the man and just let that be, instead of being emotionally attached to it, it would have solved itself. She just had, all she had to do was stay in flow and stay firm and not get so stressed out about it and not let people trigger her because she's single or because she's not with someone. The law of detachment is like that golden ticket to creating and manifesting. Because the more, have you ever heard the expression that the more that you want something, the further it gets away from you? Because a lot of times what happens is the emotional attachment that someone has to the things that they want. That emotional attachment is actually, it is, what's the word? I'm looking for a specific word. That emotional attachment is making the lens cloudy, is limiting how and what it can come through. Because you have your emotions attached to it. You feel certain kind of way about it. You feel desperate, or you feel fearful that it's not going to happen, or you feel insecure that it's never going to be you. And so you have all these emotions about that thing. And the more emotion that you have for it, the further it gets away from you. Sounds like you're saying keep firm on the desire, but focus on yourself. I love that. Ding, 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 ding. The more that you stand firm and focus on yourself, I'm not saying that you shouldn't have a desire for companionship or partnership. I believe in marriage. I am married, so I believe in marriage. But I understand that the more that you want something, the more that you have your emotions entangled with the desire, the harder it is to see what may be right in front of you. The solution may be in front of you, but you haven't detached from the outcome. You have decided that I only get to have it this way. And so since you only get to have it that way, it it is hard, having a very hard time to come to you, because it's only a lot, it's very limited in how it gets to show up. The more that you put more energy into pouring into you in your womanhood and living your life, and not centering whoever you're centering, if it's a man, if it's a career, if it's wealth, if it's finances, I don't care what it is. If you detach from that and start focusing in and pouring in yourself and taking time to meditate and pray and journal and just spend time getting to know you who you are, and studying yourself with loving and kindness, you will start, the solution will appear. The desire will manifest. You will create and bring that thing into your reality a whole lot faster, as you're, instead of holding it with both hands. Detach from what think it should be and be open to endless possibilities. Amen. Yes, absolutely. That's what you're going to do. You're going to detach from the possibilities. You're going to detach from the outcome. Excuse me, not possible. You're going to detach from the outcomes, and you're going to bring in more possibilities. Now it gets to come to you in multiple ways. It no longer is it limited by your rigid mindset. Just imagine if I only have the limitation that I get to have a husband, but he can't be wealthy. Think about that. How many women you run across and they're like, oh, I don't get to have a wealthy husband. That's a limitation. So now the things that she's desiring, which the things that may have been a better fit for her energetically, she don't get to have, because she's already putting she's limiting her desire to that level. She don't get to have that wealth. Now she gets to have exactly what she's bringing through. And it may take some time, because she may not be an energetic match for it. But the law of detachment works for every aspect of life. If you want to live a life where you look good, you drink your water, and you live a wholesome life that is full of fun, happiness, joy, enjoyment, and pleasure, learn how to practice the law of detachment across the board, not just with men. When you learn how to practice the law of detachment, you will no longer be sitting around trying to crush your brain or rack your brain on how to solve issues. You're just going to have the desire that it will be solved, and be open to the solutions that come. And then you get to have a life of carefree, of being carefree, versus being stressed, pulling out your hair, worrying about everything, being in fear. You so emotionally attached to every aspect of life, to the point where you don't get to enjoy life. And to me, and it took some time to kind of reprogram, rewire my brain, because I used to be that type of person where if there was a little bit of uncertainty, I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel safe. It took me really digging into self and finding the things that I love, and focusing on myself, and stepping into who I am as a woman, and stepping into my spirituality, and stepping into my purpose, for me to learn to kind of release that, so that I could literally just step in to that next level of detachment. And it doesn't come across as though you have a chip on your shoulder, or that you hate people, or that you're rigid, or you're a pessimist. It doesn't mean you walk around just saying, oh my gosh, I'm just going to let everything go because nothing's going to work out. You're going to let everything go, let the outcome go, but hold the desire. And the desire is going to produce the solution. It's another level of flow. Anytime that I have jumped in and try to solve a problem, it just creates a whole nother dynamic, when I just could just let the problem be solved on its own. Because when you are letting the problem be solved on its own, and it opens up and breeds creativity. So many different ways the problems get to be solved. That's the reason why a lot of times when you're trying to go in and you're trying to force solutions, that's the reason why you only have one way to solve something. One of the rules that I live by, one of the rules of thumbs that I have, is there's several ways to skin a cat. That's because I let my problems have multiple solutions. There's never one way to get something done. There's never one way to handle something. And it took me going through practicing the law of detachment to get here. Just like when it comes to detaching from a man, when you're not set on a specific man, maybe you have the desire of being with a high value man that has resources. Nothing wrong with the desire, but it's when you limit yourself and you're like, he has to be 6 feet, or he has to work at this particular company, or he has to live in this area, or he has to drive a specific car. Do you see how many things I keep adding on, and it keeps limiting what gets to come in my reality? The more that I add on, the more limitations I add also. But when I just have the desire of being with a healthy man with resources, I have a little bit of uncertainty, which uncertainty is natural. It's natural to have a little bit of uncertainty. Actually, you want a little bit of uncertainty. Like I said, it took me some time to get there where it's okay for me to have it, because I used to be the overthinker, the overanalyzer, the problem solver. Before a problem had, when I would have a problem, I would try to figure out how to solve it in multitudes of ways instead of letting problem solve itself. But practicing the law of detachment applies not just to men. Trust me, apply it to every aspect of your life and the things that you have an emotional attachment to. Release that attachment that you have. Release ownership of that thing and the outcome of that thing. And you will see that you'll be in so much flow that the solution for it, there will be multiple solutions instead of just one. You'll start to have solution for the problems that you have. Instead of only being able to handle it one way or only being able to do it one way, now you're going to have multiple solutions at your disposal. At your disposal. Disposable. Disposable? Is that how I say it? I don't know. I get caught up getting excited because I love this law. This is one of my, I probably should say it because I'm going to say it all the time. You all know I'm teaching the Divine Blueprint coming up March 17th. I'm going to be teaching all the spiritual laws, teaching you how to apply them. So if you want to go ahead and get that, the link is going to be in the chat. And also I'm going to attach it to the end of this video. But I can tell you right now, I have found the best change in my marriage when I started practicing the law of detachment. When I stopped looking at my husband as though I own him and started looking at him more as a husband, as a adult, as a man, and started really looking at him as though he's an individual and realizing and giving him that space to grow. Then he started to grow into manhood. But when I had this mentality that I owned him because I had his last name or because I was his wife, I limited how he was able to show up. I limited how he was able to romance me. I limited how he was able to do for me. I limited how he was able to solve problems for us. The law of detachment works. And you will find that you're going to be so much more happier for it because you're not stressed. You're only concerned and worried about pouring more into yourself and opening up and being more conscious and stepping into your womanhood and what type of woman you are and just pouring into yourself. And you will find that your beauty, your energy, your time, and everything will be enhanced around you. So the law of detachment applies to more than just men. You can start the process by detaching from men, especially if you're emotionally attached to being with a man or in a commitment or companionship or relationship with a man, however you're looking at it right now. Then of course you want to begin that process of detaching from a man, and you're going to find that you're going to have more access to men. Like, how does that make sense? Like, I can give you an example of this. Since I practice the law of detachment and I don't have an outcome or expectations, and I look at people as though they're an adult, I give people the space to grow and be who they are. And this also leads to me being able to discern and read them very quickly to see who they are at the core. So it doesn't take me long to kind of read a person because of the detachment that I have. Since I'm not looking at this person like I expect you to be this person, I expect you to do this, I expect you to have this. They get to be themselves. So they come to me in a moment of human, of who they are, and they're not hiding. Because see, a lot of the attachment that we have to humans, to people, they put on this mask because we have this expectation or attachment of how they're supposed to show up. And yesterday, I've been gone a little bit, being under the weather. My husband's been sick, and so I had to run an errand. And one of the things my daughter brought up to me, she said, "Do you know?" I can't say what she said because I think YouTube is going to strike me if I do this. So I can't say it exactly how she said it, but I can tell her, she said, you know that you're a magnet for men, because men were just coming up to me. But that's because I practice the law of detachment. They come to me because of the fact they know that when they come, they can kind of feel there's no judgment here. I don't have any expectation for them. I don't have any emotional attachment to them. So they come willingly and honestly and openly. They come and they say hello and they want to know more and they want to have a little chit chat and conversation. And my daughter noticed it. She said, do you know you're a magnet? I can't say what she said, but she said this. I can tell you a little bit what she said. She said, you know, you're catnip for men. And I was like, babe, I'm not trying to be. That's never the goal. I'm just minding my business and being who I am. And I expect people to be who they are. I'm not putting expectations on them. I'm not trying to monitor how they come and approach. I'm not concerned about any of that. And it makes them magnetize towards me and want to come and surround me. So she kept noticing it everywhere we went, that there was like 2 or 3 men that would come around. And she's like, you just like catnip. And I was like, I'm not trying to be. I honestly don't care. That I don't have an emotional attachment to that. It's just something that has happened with me being who I am and being more in my spirituality and more in my womanhood and caring for myself. That's what has happened. So the things that they tell you to do about how you be more magnetized and people will be more magnetic towards you, all the things that you're doing is not going to lead to it because you're actually following some type of script to get there. Really, the secret sauce, the magic, is actually pouring more into yourself and being focused on yourself and not having the emotional attachment to outcome or to people. People are more magnetized to me because I don't have that attachment. I have love. I have care. I'm not saying walk around with a chip on your shoulder and say, I hate humanity, I hate this or hate that. Just be open and honest and have the things that you want and the desires that you want and allow those desires to manifest in many possibilities in many creative ways. That's the secret sauce. That is how you really change your life. It's not going to be you going in and winking at every guy that you see or wearing specific colors. The real work is internal. When you do that work, you'll find yourself being catnip. And you won't even care. You won't care. I'm not saying it in a way to say, hey, look at me. They're coming and talking and speaking to me, because I could care less. I literally was just living my life. I'm so excited for the divine blueprint. I have been getting signs that I need to focus more on my spiritual, truly divine timing. Yes, absolutely. You all know I love anything when it comes to spiritual or spirituality. I love that type of content. Eventually, maybe I might actually have a page just for that type of content only. It just depends on, I want to get this content. I'm one of those people, I like to let focus in my energy on one thing at a time. I don't believe in splitting my energy. So I'm putting all my energy into my YouTube and into my inner circle and into my mastermind and into my community. And then once I've gotten it to the level it needs to be, then I'll probably go in and create a whole nother page just for spirituality. That's the only thing it's going to focus on. But I'm excited with you. But I wanted to do this one because I felt like it's so important, because the law of detachment is not just detaching from men. If you learn how to detach from wealth, detach from climbing the career ladder, or detach from all these things, you will find that you're going to have more of the solutions and more of the outcomes that you desire, because you're not going to be limited by the rigid thinking that comes with attachment. When we're attached to things, we have a certain image or expectation from that thing. When we're not attached to that thing, we let that thing grow and we let that thing be. It's just like being a gardener. I don't know if I've mentioned on this page, I'm a gardener. Okay. I have a garden house back. One of the beautiful things about being a gardener, you learn how to plant the seeds and you water it, but you never know if it's really going to sprout or if it's really going to grow. You may have a bad seed. You may have nothing happen, but it's the beauty in just just watering it kindly and just looking and seeing if it's going to happen. And there's a little bit of uncertainty that comes with that. So you also get very creative in how to continue to take care of that seed so that it can grow. So if you learn how to detach the emotions that you have attached to the very thing that you want, the desire that you desire, the emotion that you have with it is not helping that seed to grow. And the limitation that you're placing around it is limiting the manifestation of that desire. This is the reason why you feel like you're doing everything you're supposed to do and it's not happening, because you have an emotional attachment to it. The very thing you want gets further and further away from you. Nothing wrong with the desire, nothing wrong with the intention, but there's something wrong when you limit that desire. When you start to limit the desire and say it has to come this way, I can only accept it if it comes this way, I can only expect it if it comes this way, then you limit the grace of God and how he can bring, how that can be manifest in your life. One of the questions I get all the time is like, Braille, your life is wonderful. How do you have everything that you want? This is how. This is one of my foundational spiritual laws that I've implemented across the board. I've learned to just have that desire, cultivate it and water it like a seed, but not so be emotionally attached that I limit the growth. And that goes, if you actually look at me as a content creator, I could really be up here very upset because me as a content creator, I could be like, oh, some other people went before me and they've blown up. I could be like, oh, I haven't reached what I wanted, what I thought it was going to be. I could quit. But I understand that I have the desire to create a community and be a service to my community. I'm just going to have to water it and keep watering it and keep showing up, being consistent and just releasing that desire and allowing that desire to manifest. That way it gets to manifest and it creates so many different possibilities of how it gets to happen or how the outcome gets to happen. Now it gets to go beyond my imagination, because my imagination couldn't even hold where the community is. I can tell you my imagination can hold where the community is, because my goal was just to have a small following. It's not, I never even imagined even having over 1,000 followers, because it never was about getting a big following. It was just more about getting, being of service to the community of women that desire or require that kind of support. But when, instead of me sitting here, I could have just smothered that desire and said it only has to be 1,000. I can only accept 1,000. And that means I forsake what God would have for me that was more. Even my imagination is limited. And I guarantee yours is also. Your imagination can be limited by what you perceive that you are available for. Even when it comes to money, to your career, to children, to any of the things that any desire that you can have a limitation around it. That's the reason why it's so important to detach from it and allow that desire to be watered and to be cared for. And not get a chip on your shoulder about the desire not manifesting, because that is another thing that I've had that happen too, where I'm like, why isn't it happening fast enough? Why isn't it happening now? I'm holding on the desire, I'm watering it, I'm caring for it, but why isn't it happening now? And one of the things I've received back is that because it isn't time. It isn't time. The things that I imagine for that desire, just there's no limits for it. And since I have a limited imagination, just like everybody else, even I am constantly working on expanding my consciousness. So how do you detach? Every single day, put it in practice to detach. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. We're conditioned to be attached to the outcome of everything. We're conditioned to be attached to the outcome of commitment, of career, of education. we have so much of a burden on our shoulders as far as the outcome. So you're gonna have to practice daily releasing yourself from the outcome. And instead of speaking and talking about your frustrations, journal about it. Journal about it. Meditate, pray, and practice releasing that outcome. And instead of when uncertainty hits, when you have that little bit of uncertainty hits, instead of allowing it to sow seeds and become very fearful, take the time to get very happy. Instead of when uncertainty starts to hit you, I want you to start to be happy. You know why? Because uncertainty breeds creativity. That is when you know that is your sign that the multiple possibilities and creativity is about to open up. There's going to be so many problems solved and solved in so many ways. So instead of allowing uncertainty to take you away and you start being overthinking and overanalyzing and trying to force a solution, I want you to start to get very grateful and happy that there's a little bit of uncertainty because there's risk with everything in life. That risk, that uncertainty creates creativity and possibilities. So just stand firm and wait on the solutions to reveal itself and the possibilities to reveal itself and the paths of creativity to open. And this takes patience and care because I understand wanting it right now and coming from a person that wasn't very patient to someone who's very patient now. Because I've seen the results of this. I've seen the results of trying to solve it and take care of it instead of just letting the solution present itself. When you try to solve it and take care of it, what happens is usually another problem pops up. If you let the solution present itself, the problem would have been solved. All right, so if we don't have any other comments or questions, I'm going to get ready to close this out. I appreciate you ladies for being here all the way to the end. Take the time to like the video. I am so excited. Hopefully I will see you all in the Divine Blueprint. We're going to be talking about all the spiritual laws, and we're going to talk about how to apply them so that you can live your best life. It's time to live and live it abundantly. You don't have to live a life of struggle and strife or harm. You can live a life of abundance and happiness and joy. That's the reason why a lot of people are like, oh, you're so happy all the time. No one's happy all the time. But I can say majority of the time I am. And that is because, like I said, I practice the law of detachment. Since I have a desire, I just release myself from the outcome of it. If I have a problem, I release my need to solve it. And I allow myself open to the possibilities of the solution. And I have found that it works every single time. You just have to be patient. In practicing and applying spiritual laws, patience is going to be required. It's going to be required in learning these habits. It's going to help you to create the life that you desire. All right, so I don't see any other questions. I appreciate you, ladies. I will see you all on the next one. You all have a great day. Bye.